Hello, everybody. Captain Lucas Faulkner from Make the Turn Charters. I'm here with Marc from King's Landing, and we are going to do our Torpedo live cast tonight based on our topic tonight, which is going to be planer boards. Hi, Marc. How you doing? You're back?
I'm good. I'm back. Yeah, technical issues, but it's okay if it's only the first 30 seconds, and hopefully everything
We're
works.
just we're just
Works good.
fishermen, Marc. It's not a problem.
Yeah, exactly. On the topic of fishing, Lucas, I know we were talking about it a little bit, but as we wait for a bunch of viewers to join us here, um, what have you been up to on the fishing side of things?
I would like to say that I've been out fishing a lot, but unfortunately, the full time job's been kicking my butt. I've been in school a lot, trying to get fishing stuff ready for the big boat. And every time I'm off and can get out on the lake, the weather's not cooperating with me. Starting to see some people show up now, which is good news. But yeah, I really haven't been able to get out. How about yourself? You been able to get out at all?
The last time I was out fishing. I was actually, I think it was cheating for a guy from Toronto, Ontario. I was actually down in Fort Lauderdale, and I met up with Ivan Shawa, who's one of the Torpedo pro staff captains, and went out with him on his boat out of Pompano in Florida. And it was a super cool trip. Got out there on the water. We had a great day. We trolled way out to 1,800 feet of depth because we ended up wanting to do some deep dropping for swordfish. Anyways, long story short, we caught some tuna, we caught some mahi that day trolling, and then we landed it was a smaller sword, but landed a swordfish. So that was a pretty cool day that probably won't beat for a while, but you
Yeah.
know
What was your temperatures down there for that?
it was I can't remember. Honestly, I don't remember what the water temps were, but it was a good week. Like it was really warm weather in the mid to high 70s most of the days. I want to say it was the second week of December, and the weather was real good. Right
No,
after that, I think
no
actually it went
snow
cold.
then, huh? No
No,
snow, and
no
didn't
snow,
see your breath in the morning.
no snow, no ice. It's funny you talk about ice. We talk about fishing. Like, right now a lot of my buddies, my dad, they all can't wait to go ice fishing because it's been a bit of a rough season for them with such warm temperature. I get messages, and I think many people know I cannot stand. I hate ice fishing. So, for me, it doesn't matter. I would much welcome no ice, warm temperatures. Get the spring season started out sooner. Do you like to ice fish yourself, or are you more of a
So
wet
I,
water
I
person versus hard? I think Lucas is frozen. I'm not sure. Can you give me a comment, folks, if you can hear myself while Lucas is frozen on my end, or am I frozen? I'm not sure. Okay, so it's Lucas that's frozen. So hopefully he cut right off right in the middle of telling me if he enjoyed ice fishing or not. While we wait for Lucas to join back up, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you guys like ice fishing. Okay, it looks like we're gonna wait for Lucas to join back on here, but tonight we're gonna talk about playing boards. But I need my partner in crime here, so I'm gonna give him a second to hopefully get reconnected. I got a few people, so I got Joe that says he loves to ice fish. Um, Steve says no thanks. Steve, I'm with you. Vlad, we can fish together anytime, man. You can't stand it. I can't stand it. Looks like Donnie likes it. Ice fishing makes Vlad throw up, so that's what I'm hearing here. So it sounds like a bit of a mixed bag of folks that it might be controversial when I say this, but yeah, I'm not an ice fishing fan myself. It's a bit of a running joke as I do these torpedo sessions and do this. I'm with Jeff here. Jeff is talking all about that he can't wait to get his boat out. So I'm with him. I always say when it comes to ice fishing, the last thing I want to do is sit in an outhouse over a hole freezing. I know there is a heater, but I'd much rather be on a nice boat. But that's me. Anyways, Lucas is back. Lucas, I was trying to figure out for
I'm
you, do
back.
you like hard water fishing or are you a soft water guy?
Well, I mean, honestly, I'd rather be out on the big lake on a nice 80-degree day with the sun and virtually no wind. But I've been known to dabble in the art of the ice water. I've been out on the hard water getting some pike, perch, panfish, things like that. It's fun. I typically make it more of an adventure with maybe a campfire or a couple of adult beverages, but I don't take it as serious as a lot of guys do. I'm not getting out at 4 a.m. like I would in the summertime, but yeah, but you don't like it at all, huh? You don't like the ice fishing?
Not at all. My dad loves ice fishing. He tries to take me, and it just doesn't work for me at all. It doesn't work. I
Well, that's
spend the
good because
winter
this year there isn't any.
exactly. There isn't any, and I spend the winter preparing for salmon season. Right. I get all my gear ready. I paint a lot of my own stuff, retire all those leaders, and get organized. We're not going to talk about winter prep or spring prep today because our colleagues did that last week. So we're going to talk about planer boards. So just remind
Yeah,
folks,
yeah, which is going to be
we are
coming
going
quicker
to
than you think.
Yep, we are going to have a question and answer. So we are going to have an opportunity to answer your questions. We are also going to ask you a question, and there will be a Torpedo prize pack, including a free ticket to the Greater Niagara Outdoor Show coming up in February. So just wanted to flag that to folks as we get into planer boards. So, Lucas, where do you want to start when it comes to talking about planer boards?
Well, I suppose we could start right off. If we go, after this weekend, if there's still boat launches available, I'm going to go out in my small boat. So we could start off with ideas for small boat planer boards. How I run mine, I have two different options. For my smaller boat, I run the bigger regular boards. I have on the smaller boat, I have the Canon collapsibles, the old school from back in the 80s. They fold up nice in the smaller boat.
Are they like
And I
yellow
use
or
those
orange?
on a, yeah, they're orange. They come in
Yep.
like that neon greenish color also.
Yep.
But I use those. And then I use the Amish board planer board releases, which I like a lot because they stay right on the line. I don't have to worry about forgetting them at home or whatever. It's right on the boom. And then if for some reason, I only want to run a couple of lines, I don't have, 6 lines I'm going to put out, I can run the inline boards. And there's a whole bunch of different manufacturers of those as well now.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So on your small boat, what size is your small boat?
It's just a 17-foot aluminum low.
So on your small boat, do you find you run the big boards more, or you run the small boards more, like the inlines?
Well, I'm a different soul from most charter captains. Most people like to run the smaller boards. I like the bigger boards. I like taking a couple of extra minutes to get set up, and then when you're fighting a fish, you're literally just fighting the fish. You're not going to bring in the inline board. You're just fighting the fish. So I like the bigger boards. That's what I typically use. Those if I can, unless I'm out just for a short time and don't want to mess with them. Then I'll put out the smaller ones. Mine are old. My inline planer boards are old. I got church tackle, the orange boards. Some of them have the flag, some of them don't. And then I even have the yellow, the really small yellow ones that I use close to the boat.
Yeah.
So,
No,
but typically I like the big ones.
Yeah, we're similar. So, I don't have a small boat anymore. I got a larger boat with my 27 Tierra, but it's funny. I'd say when I first got the boat, I was running some big boards, but the way I was running them was I had manual reels on the hardtop, and the challenge was the way that the individual that built the hardtop put the rod holders. They were on too much of an angle out, and actually as I go to make a turn, the planer board lines want to rip the rod out of the holder. And one time my dad actually took the boat out, and a fishing rod happened to go in the water because of that very reason. So for the last number of years, I've been running inline boards, but I had enough because I missed my big boards. So last season I said, screw it. I spent a few bucks and I bought the Cisco electric reels, and I have those mounted on the top of my hardtop. And then I've got a oh my gosh, I want to say it's a Big John mast on the very front of the boat. It's actually like on the pulpit basically, and what that does, it enables me to bring everything so much more forward. And I run the big boards a lot more than I run the small boards. For me, when I talk big boards, I'm running the Big John Otter. I think they're called the Otter boats, and I've got them with the dual keels. I've added the second keel, one without a weight, one with a weight. And why am I doing that? Because I love to run torpedo weighted steel, and I love to run longer lead cores, and therefore you need to have that extra keel on those Otter boats. But similar to you, Lucas, I'd say if I'm unsure about the conditions or how the fishing is going to be, that's when I put out my small boards. I've started running these, the new Dreamweaver Ninjas. I'm not pro staff. I'm not sponsored by them, but these are a great board. They make two sizes. I don't have the small size. I just run the larger size. I've run these with up to a 350 weighted steel with no problem. What I love about these, you hit the button here, releases the release here, releases the release here. So it's basically a one-handed release when my customer's got a fish and I need to release the board. The other thing I do, I run a lot of I run a lot of the rear planers, like the cones. So I got a couple here, and I run these almost all the time. And what I mean by that is on Lake Ontario, on the Canadian side, we're allowed 2 rods per angler. I think in the US you're allowed 3. We're allowed 2. So with that, I'll run two lines in each of my big boards. I'll run 2 divers, 2 riggers. Next year I'll be on running 3 riggers. I'm putting the 3rd rigger back on. But 2 divers, 2 riggers. That gets me to 8 rods, and then I'll always have a shoot rod on this cone down the middle to be rod number 9. So I'd say for me, I use the different planer boards, but I'm like you, Lucas. If I can, I run the big boards. The only other time I don't run the big boards, for anyone, and I know there's a bunch of Toronto guys here on the broadcast today. The water I fish is called it's called the Drop by Scarborough Bluffs or by the city of Toronto. It can be worse than a highway in rush hour some days in the summer, and the big boards can be problematic with guys, hate to say it, running into them. That's where the small boards come into play, because I can bring them in and out as I need to with boat traffic.
And I was going to actually say the opposite. I was going to say the smaller boards, unless it's perfectly calm and they're producing a wake, the smaller boards are harder for other boats to see because they are just really, really small, even though they're orange. And I like my bigger boards. Now, I don't run on my bigger boat. I run, a friend of mine, Captain Chris, made me a homemade pair of dual boards. And these things, I have a 10-meter Trojan, and these things will pull my boat in half. They pull so hard, and I have no problems running multiple weighted steel on one side, whether I do a 400 and 300 or a couple of 300s. I've never had a problem. I can see what you're saying. You are trying to pull them in to get them out of the way in case you get close to someone. That's not happening barehanded. You'll end up hurting your hands. And on rough days, I have had them take a dive, and that's it. You're done for 15, 20 minutes as you're stopping the boat and waiting for them to come back up, bringing all your lines in and starting all over again from scratch.
I used to have a pair of homemade boards that were similar to.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So I was gonna say, I used to have a pair of homemade boards that were similar to the Amish ones. They were the same material as the Amish.
Yeah, same idea.
And while they dug in and pulled amazing, and my dad's got a Trojan 11 meters, so I know exactly what you mean. While they dug in and pulled amazing, the biggest challenge was I blew a set of motors on a set of Big John electrics, and they would kill me bringing them in. And I don't know about you, Lucas, but I don't run a mate I don't have a mate when I'm on the water. I do it all alone. The last thing after a 5.5-hour trip I want to do is wind in or struggle with planer boards, and that's why I moved to the Big Johns, because they get picked up and they like surf in.
And that was something I was going to do, was go to the Otter boats. But in the last couple of years, me trying to get a hold of a set isn't the easiest thing. So if anybody's watching this, I'll be at the Niagara show, and I'll love to buy a couple of Otter boards from anybody that's out there. But I'd love to get into the Otter boards for sure. And I'm sure my first mates, if they're watching, would absolutely love to hear that I'm going to Otter boards.
Yeah, they're great.
But And when you talk about those stern planers, there's a lot of benefits a lot of people don't understand to those stern planers. I do run them. Uh, what I like doing is, you get a fish on and you can see whether you're on a turn or, it's rough. You can see where that weighted steel or lead core is. And if that fish is getting that way, you can let that line out and you'll watch that stern planer actually go over the top of where the fish is and keep that line away from that fish. Where if you
Yeah,
just have
I
it running
could not
down the
agree with you
chute, you
more.
could be in trouble.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. It's interesting because we've got Bill here talking about how they work good for walleyes, but too much trouble for kings. And then we've got Rob saying he loves his yellow stern planer. And I agree. Like I love it too because it's always behind the back of my boat. It's typically running a 100 weighted steel, a 5-color lead, or a 150 weighted steel. That's typically what it's running at all times. And I've always got it set with at least 200 feet out. And then the moment any one of my long lines, riggers, or divers hits, I just flip the bail on that and let it sing. And I'll let it go 400 or
Yep.
500 feet behind the boat. And it's out of
Yeah,
the
and with
way.
it being that
And
shape, it's easy to bring in. And I'll be
yeah,
honest with you, I even use it because I'm always, you get it in the off season. Like now, I'm respooling some poles. Um, you know, uh, Adding another weighted steel or a lead core, or redoing my dipsies with my 7 strand or 19 strand. And what I do in the springtime is I'll actually, when I'm fishing out a little bit deeper, I'll put that stern planer on as a lure and let it all the way out. And then that gives it just enough friction that when you're bringing it in, it tightens it up on the reel a little bit. And then that
yeah,
way, your reel's a little bit more ready to go. And so I use it for multiple, purposes.
yeah. No, I 1,000% agree. Like I learned the stern planer trick actually from Ivan Shaw from Get It Wet too. And I can tell you, running that, I used to run a shoot rod with no stern planer, and it was a pain in the you know what, constantly bringing it in, keeping it out of the way. And I can tell you that stern planer has put fish in the boat for me and for my customers. We'll be fighting a fish on a rigger or diver. Next thing you know, and I'll often take the stern planer and put it in my hard top, and then suddenly it starts singing and bouncing, and literally I jump up past a customer, and now we got a double. So
That's actually
I
pretty
am a
fun too,
huge
because
believer.
I've done that before where I'll put it up above everybody. You're taking pictures of the fish that you caught. You forgot to put that, shoot line back
Yeah.
down, and it goes screaming, and everybody's spinning around in 360s trying to figure out which pole's going because it's in front of everybody up on the hard top.
It's
So
like it's
I'm
like
also
suddenly
had
it's
a
the
note here
green
from
stickers.
Matthew. We also are giving away a couple of tickets to the outdoor show in Niagara Falls. That's happening uh February, I believe 16, 17, 18, and 19. I think they threw an extra
Yep.
day in there. I know I'm doing a seminar. I think a lot of people are doing seminars. I know Torpedo Divers is normally up there. I'm pretty sure he'll be up there again this year. So it'd be good to get up there and talk more fishing to everybody.
Yeah, I'll be
And
around. I'll be around, but I'm not doing any seminars of that one. I'm actually going to learn. So I always sign up for the salmon school. I find it great to listen to different captains, and you always take something away. So every year I sign up for that school, and I've missed it the last few. So
yeah, no, it's always a good time. And I work pretty much everybody. I love working for everybody's booths up there, so they can either go to the bathroom or go get lunch or whatever. So I'll be floating around somewhere in somebody's booth. Me and my first mates will all be dressed up in our flashy bowling shirts, everybody calls them. But
nice.
yeah, feel free, if you don't know who I am, come on up and introduce yourself. And I'd love to talk to you guys. Back to the planer boards though. Um, yeah, I've really fallen in love with the big boards. I another benefit of using those big boards is when I'm fishing my browns starting now. I just use 6 foot light spinning rods with a real small, level wind reel. And when you're catching 3, 4, 5 pound browns, it's a lot more fun than when I'm using a heavier rod because I have an inline board that's pulling on it constantly. So that was a reason that I really started to, when I originally went to the inline boards, went back to the big boards, is I could start using a lot smaller tackle, lighter line, not worrying about it breaking if it's rough. Drags going out, creeping out when I'm trying to speed up a little bit. Um, so that was another big reason why I went to the back to the bigger boards as opposed to the inlines. But I'm definitely guilty in the later on in the summer about putting out those bigger inline boards when I don't want to have to put them out for one 400 steel or lead core. And that's just sometimes when you get lazy near the end of the year or it's really hot. But yeah, that's just some of the things that I like about using the planer boards. It sounds like some of the people here are about the same way.
Yeah, planer board. I love planer boards. I think also as the Great Lakes just keep getting clearer and clearer, you find that there's downriggers are great in the morning, they're great in the end of the day, but I find especially where I am, a lot of days by 8 a.m. the downriggers have turned off and they're not as productive, and then it turns into a diver or a long line and show, and that's where the planer boards really come in. There's many times I go back to the dock and I talk to a bunch of the guys, the wreck guys, and they're struggling. They didn't get many fish for 3-4 hours, but they're just running downriggers and maybe a couple of divers. And I've said them many times, like, don't be afraid to pull a diver and pull a rigger and put out a long line, or find another guy and put out two long lines. And next thing you know, you see a lot more rods moving. So the long lines work, especially as the sun comes up. And I can't think of a more effective way to get long lines out there other than running big boards, running planer boards in some way, shape, or form, right? And that's where I think for me that's a success. I do have a friend of mine that bought a boat. He bought a boat out of the southern U.S. and it's got outriggers on it, and he's actually been throwing outriggers on. He's been throwing his lines on outriggers. That's been working for him, but most boats don't have outriggers, so planer boards work. Lucas, what would be?
Yeah, and I'd like
when
to
you
get
think
some of
about
those
planer
ninja
boards?
boards. I see someone's talking about those now. I'd like to give those a try, so I'll probably get a couple this year. Hopefully, there's someone selling them up at the show. Grab a couple of those as well, because, like you said, depending on how many people are on the boat, there's always they all serve their purpose. The big boards or the little boards, they all serve their purpose. And you got to use different tricks of the trade. Like you said, the stern planer is also another one that's pretty awesome. The inline boards, my problem with those is if I have new fishing clients on the boat, the rods are constantly bouncing and flexing with waves, and they think it's a fish every 2 seconds. So those bigger boards, you don't have to have so much bounce and spring in your rods.
Not
But
just
again,
that.
like I
Question
said,
for you,
everybody
Matt.
has their own likes and dislikes. So
Question for you, Lucas. So, what's your opinion on landing ratio when it comes to big boards versus small boards? I've got my opinion, but which one do you find you get more? Do you land more fish with big boards? Land more fish with small boards? Equal? Doesn't matter. What are your thoughts?
So I'm probably the unpopular opinion on here. A lot of people are going to disagree with me on two things I'm going to say. One, I found that my landing ratio is better with big boards because I don't have to worry about the inline board coming in with the line and someone having to take it off. And that's the same theory that I have with snubbers on dipsy divers. I run my dipsies with no snubbers on them whatsoever, which I know a lot of people are strongly against that. But I've never had a line break from a fish hitting it without a snubber. But I have definitely lost a lot of fish with snubbers, and I've lost a lot of fish on inline boards. And as we're winding in an inline board, a fish on an inline board, I'm nervous we've lost that fish until someone disconnects that board. And then if you have someone that's new that doesn't know better than to hold on to that line and they just let it go, that could cause you to lose a fish. And so I'm always nervous until that planer board's off the line and they're tight again. So
Yep.
again,
So
I
it's
don't
so it's
think I'm
funny.
a popular opinion on that, but that's how I feel.
So I got to jump in and say I agree with you on the first point 1,000%, and that's why I asked. I think you get a much better landing ratio on a big board, and I'd say for a couple of reasons. first of all, to your point, you are not fighting the board because it's not there, right? And that, like, I love these boards, but you've got this board trying to pull away all the time
And then if
while
the
you're
fish makes a
trying to
good
bring a
run,
fish
that
in.
board could dive underwater. I've
Yeah,
never had a camera on. I've used the cameras underwater before when they release off a downrigger and stuff, and I can see the slack when some fish, depending on when they release, they'll release, and I'll watch that line get slack. I've seen it on my cameras, and I can only imagine if you're fighting a fish and it runs and that inline board dives, which once in a while they do. I can only imagine if that fish turns and runs towards the boat, how much slack it's getting. Um,
I could
Again,
not
this is
agree
just
with you.
my
I could not
opinion.
agree with you
I'm sure
more.
there's other guys that can contradict it, what I'm saying, but
So I agree with you 1,000%. You know, even like with these ninjas, they're great. That if they do dive, they right themselves almost instantly. It's the way the amount of foam they've got, they right themselves. But that's still, to your point, slack in the line. My theory with the big board is when it gets ripped off the hook, sorry, off the snap, and I use the Amish releases just like you. You get that little bit of a second, and then there's that yanking. And I think that actually just really impales or sets the hook in the fish's mouth. So I think that's part of it. And then you're not fighting the board. Don't get me wrong. I do use inlines. Sometimes they're easy to get started with, not as much expense, easy to put back out, but you lose more fish, right? So I've been running big boards since I had a 16-foot aluminum boat. I had a mast which went into the seat pole, and I've been running big boards since then because it's possible. You can do it, and actually, in some regards, I think it was probably easier on my small boat than it was on my big boat. Interesting comment you made though about the diver. I do it differently. I don't run snubbers, but I don't run nothing. Because I use a lot of slide divers or I use a lot of remote divers. I put a 40-pound mono lead on all my wire. So I have 20, 30 pounds of 40-pound that's in front of the diver. And that's giving me that stretch, right? So I like to have something, but I'm with you. I don't like to have the full spring of a snubber a lot of the
right,
time.
right. And I agree with you too on the small boat. When I was a kid, my family didn't have a lot of money. They were big into duck hunting. And so the only time I ever did trout and salmon fishing with my uncles and my dad was on their 14-foot aluminum boat with their little 10 horsepower outboard.
Yeah,
And they actually put a boom right on the bow of the boat. They screwed it right into the aluminum.
yeah,
And that's how I was raised. In my experience, the inline boards just started 10, 15 years ago. So I've been fishing for probably 25, 30 years, and there was no real inline boards back then that I know of that I even had an option for. So I grew up with them. So again, like I said, each one is a tool. You got to decide which tool is best for your day or your boat or whatever. But like I said, in my experience, I have more fun after the big boards are put out. Setting them up and picking
yeah.
them up, yeah, it's kind of a pain. But once they're out, just putting them on an Amish board, twisting, putting it on, sending it out, it's a piece of cake. They get out to
Snap your
fish
fingers.
faster. They get out to fish faster. I could put 3 or 4 out there on the same line and not worry about them getting, one gets pulled back and drops over the top of the other one. They're just, I just, and then again, it's just my experience with bigger boards. And I'm sure, like I said, there's guys on here that are probably more experienced with inline boards and can do it better than I can.
Yeah. I have run a lot of inline boards, but I tell you, I'm like you. I will go to the big boards if I know where the fish are and I'm going to be in that spot for 5 or 6 hours. It is absolutely big boards. If fishing's being tough and I think I'm gonna have to move around and be very mobile, it is the inline boards because to your point, I don't want to be spending all that time trying to bring the damn things in. So I'm with you 1,000%. So Lucas, so let's say you're gonna put out 4 or 6 rods on planer boards. What are your go-to setups that you will put out? Whether it be what lengths of weight steel or lead, spoons, flies. What are your go-to setups when you're running planer
Well,
boards?
honestly, it depends on what I'm targeting. If I'm doing browns this time of year, I'm using just regular mono. 12-pound to 15-pound test mono with a small bay rat or a small bomber or small stick bait. Um, as I start moving offshore and getting some more salmon and some bigger fish, that I'm using, maybe a one color lead core or, um, a split shot on a spoon or something like that. And then I use them when I start using the big boards in the summertime. It's when, either the lake is flipped or, the temperature breaks only down 20, 30 feet. And I know I can get salmon, rainbows, and everything on all over the water column. Cause then I can use 3 colors, 5 colors of lead, 100 foot weighted steel, 400-foot weighted steel. And I like being able to do that. And I like what you said earlier that sometimes you'll even take a rigger out, excuse me, and put out the long lines. And I got some captains I'm friends with out on Lake Michigan that a lot of them don't run down riggers anymore. It's too much stuff in the water. And when you got gin clear water and you're running 2 15-pound balls with cables and probes and everything else, they're going to weighted steel, lead cores, dipsies, slide divers, things that get all your baits as far away from the boat as humanly possible. So um, I love watching a downrigger release. I'm probably not going to be leaving, or I'm probably not going to be fishing without a downrigger for a while, but that is options when you're running planer boards or, like you said, outriggers. You can run those long lines and replace your downriggers and even your dipsies if you want.
Yeah, it's funny you said. So like with us, especially on the Canadian side, with the limit of 2 rods per person, there's the odd time I get charters where it's one guy booking me for, I've even had one guy book me for 8 hours, and you're limited to 4 rods. So because I can put my 2 out for me, 2 out for his license, and yeah, definitely like I go down to one rigger at that point, and even that rigger I'll literally have like 150, 200-foot lead on it to almost mimic the same concept of just away from the boat. For me, so I don't. Our marinas don't even open till May 1st, and my boat doesn't go in the water until typically middle of May. So I don't do much of a brown trout fishery. For me, I start out really for kings and for steelhead. So for me, my go-to, I run 5 long lines, right? For me, it's typically 2 on each board and then 1 on the rear planer. So, if I think about last season and the way I do it is every big board has a weighted steel and every big board has a lead core. And the first reason I do that is, God forbid I get a tangle. I don't want to have two weighted steels tangle together because good luck trying to untangle when everything looks the same. So I will run, for example, I'll have a 200 weighted steel, which gets me down, in my opinion, 42 feet. And then I'll probably have on that one, I'll have like a 7 color, which gets me down, 32, 35 feet with a spoon. The 7 colors got a spoon. The 200 weighted steel, if it's either 200 or 250, that one's got a flash or fly on it. And for me, it's honestly 99 times out of 100, it's the same flash or fly. It just kicks butt for me. That's the one side, and that's typically the port side. On the starboard side, that's where I'll do typically like a 350 weighted steel. So that's down like deep, right? So I'm getting down to that 65, 70 range. And then I'll have a 10 color, which is getting me in that, mid to high 40s, call it 50-foot range. The 350 weighted steel, that's probably got like an 8-inch flasher with a meat rig of some sort, either a clean meat rig or a Twinkie rig. And then that 10 color, it's a spoon. 9 times out of 10, it's probably a mixed veggie spoon on the 10 color because that combo just seems to work for me. And then down the chute on the rear planer, it's for me now. When I started doing it, it was a lead core setup, like a 4 or 5 color, but I've actually flipped it over to a weighted steel. So now it's either a 100 or 125 or a 150 weighted steel down the chute.
And like the guys were saying last Thursday, I really think that the weighted steel, even if you're using a 100-foot section or even a 50-foot section, you could use that like you're using your lead core, because I think you still get that undulation of your lure going faster and shallower and then slowing down and dropping deeper. I think you still get that. I see we're over our 20 minutes here. We've been a little bit long. We did have a question that needed to be answered. Mark, you want to take the question?
which question is, let me see it.
You had a question that you wanted to ask for the tickets
My question. Yes. My
for the
question.
show.
Sorry, my apologies, guys. Yeah, so first, if I can just touch on your comments about weighted steel, and I'd say I absolutely agree with you on the weighted steel. The one comment I would say that I love about weighted steel over lead core, and I do like lead core, don't get me wrong, is you're going to get tangles. It's the reality of the situation. You get tangles. You tangle a lead core, 7 times out of 10, you're getting the scissors out and stuff's going in the garbage. You tangle a weighted steel, I would be willing to say almost 10 times out of 10, you're saving the weighted steel. You might damage the mono or this, that, and the other, but the weighted steel, you can untangle. It doesn't
That's
tangle that
true.
bad, and B, you can
That's very
separate it.
true.
So for me, I'm cheap. I don't want to waste stuff. So like the weighted steel for me, it works and it does not get wasted because of tangles and stuff. So
And
for
my
me,
weighted
I
steel,
love that.
my weighted steel, I've been using for years. I have never replaced a weighted steel unless I made a mistake, like I broke it or I cut it, or it needed to get replaced because of operator error. But I have a 400 weighted steel that's probably 3-4 years old, been used every year without a problem. And someone was asking on here, what board do you use for the 300 weighted steel? I have the biggest church board, the FX 44X or something like that. And Mark's been using the larger Ninja board. I also use, when I'm using multiple weighted steels on my board, I use the big boards. And I use the Amish Outfitter release. I just tighten them up a little bit. The way I terminate, or the way I rig my weighted steel, is I do probably about 50 to 100 feet of bright green 30-pound monofilament before I put on the braid, so I can attach that to the planer boards. That's it, Tim. Thank you. The TX44 is the inline board I use, but I can also use the Amish Outfitters releases with I just tighten the screw down, and it holds just fine for me.
On my dad's boat, on my dad's 11-meter Trojan, he runs the large gator boards, and those work fine. We've pulled a 350, even 400. So again, they work for a 300. But anyways, we should get to that question. So I'd say the question of the night, and this is for 2 tickets to the Niagara Fishing Show and a Torpedo prize pack, is what type of fishing do I hate the most? That's the question of the night. First person to respond will be the winner. But with that, I'd say while waiting for the response to come in, I know some of you know the answer to this question. What type of fishing do I hate the most? Vlad nailed it. Vlad Mervin, you were the first one to come up, followed by John Sipko. Sorry, John. Vlad beat you by seconds there. Vlad, you've won 2 tickets to the Niagara show, as well as the Torpedo prize pack. But anyways, guys, thanks so much. I think overall, there's no one way to do this when it comes to planer boards. But if you haven't run planer boards, give them a try, whether they be inline boards, whether it be the Stern planer. I highly recommend the Stern planer if you haven't. And if you check out my YouTube channel under Kings Landing Sport Fishing, you'll see videos on the Stern planer. And if you haven't run big boards, you've heard it from Lucas and I. We swear by big boards. Do not be scared that because you got a small boat that you can't run big boards. You heard it from Lucas. They used to run them on a 14-foot boat. I used to run them on a 16.5-foot boat. Don't be scared. Either give them a try or find a buddy and say, hey, can I come out fishing with you and run your planer boards? I tell you, there is nothing better than a nice teenager or low 20s king smashing a line on a planer board and whipping out of the release and starting to scream. It reminds me of that whole green stick on Wicked Tuna where you just suddenly get the whiplash.
Same idea.
An incredible
Those
feeling.
things will come out of that release so fast. A lot of times you don't even see them release. It just starts running immediately. So yeah. I agree with you. I like that too. So well, thank you everybody. Ariana asked if I saw a message. I didn't know if she was talking to me or you, Mark. I didn't know if she had something on there. She's disappeared.
I had no message, so hopefully it's not important. Hopefully it's not important.
Yeah, I got nothing either from her, so I don't know what that was about. But I think we're good to be done for the night. Like I said, I'll be at the Niagara show every single day. I'll probably be out of there afternoons and stuff, and then causing my own little trouble there at the casino or whatever. But feel free to come up and say hi. I'll talk to you about anything you want to talk about. That's what the whole weekend is about. Come on out and see us. Until
Yeah,
then,
absolutely. I'm
I'll
gonna
be
be there
back
at the
on next
salmon.
Thursday.
Yeah, and I'll be at the salmon school on the one day, and I might try and see if I can sneak out of the house the second day and spend the Saturday, Sunday there because it's I love that Niagara show. I'm so glad it's back on, and that as a Canadian we can cross the border again. It makes me very happy. So we'll see you guys there. And if you've never been, if you're in the Toronto area and you've never been to the Niagara show, you got to check it out. Bye, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you all later.
Bye, guys.